Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. Tonight we have 10 stories coming out to just a little bit over 2 hours as per usual. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 1200 likes on this one. Liking the video helps out a bunch with making sure that my channel stays in the algorithm. Again, only like if you feel this video is deserving of it. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated. I post content just like this all of the time. Also, really quick, this is super important. I've been having an issue lately with people impersonating me. Usually they are either asking for money or they're asking to click on some weird link. I've been banning these channels as often as I see them. I just want to make it very clear, I will never, ever, under any circumstances, will I ask my viewers for money, nor will I ask you to click on any weird links. So if you see it, please flag it and report it if you don't mind. And again, I'll be banning them as I see them. My only accounts on the whole entire internet is this YouTube channel, my second channel Terrify, which I have subboxed in this channel, so you can always check if it's mine by whether or not it's in my subbox. My Twitter account at femboymoding, and then I have a Reddit account, which is just u/slumberreads, but I only use that account for sourcing stories for this channel. I don't use it for anything else. So if you see something, please be sure to report it. As long as we're all aware and we're reporting it as we see it, then they can't do anything. It's really crappy, and I wish it wasn't a thing, but unfortunately it's the internet where, I don't know, crappy people exist on the internet. I think we're all very much aware of that. Yeah, I think that's all I have for you. Enjoy the video, tell somebody you love them, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. Before my divorce, I thought being home alone was so relaxing, so freeing. A moment in which I didn't need to worry about anyone but me, and if I laid on the couch the whole time and left the dirty dishes in the sink till later, there was no one to criticize me. After my divorce, when the kids were at their dad's, it just felt lonely. Not all the time. Sometimes it really was nice to just eat chips and do nothing, or take an hour-long bath with a bath bomb and a good book. But today, I was feeling lonely. I needed friends. Part of my bedtime routine is to go around the house and pick up any last dishes and trash as I turn the lights off. The dogs normally walk with me, but tonight they were in the backyard and hadn't been quite ready to come in. As I reached my son's bedroom and reached for the light switch, I frowned. I had thought I had already turned this one off. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. I flicked the switch, picked up a plate off of his bed, and moved on. After I convinced the dogs to come in, I made my way to my own bedroom. My son's light was on. I had turned that off, didn't I? My husky, Chloe, stood next to me this time, ears back flat. A low growl sounded from her throat. I quietly made my way to my bedroom and grabbed my phone and my gun. 911 keyed in, ready to hit the call button. Chloe and I walked through the room, joined by my lab, Max. I checked under the bed as they sniffed corners. We checked the closet together. Nothing. No one. I checked the windows. Still locked. Chloe relaxed as we walked back out of the room. I flicked off the light. I walked through the rest of the house with both dogs by my side. It's a small enough house. 3 bedrooms, but barely. No basement, no attic. My skin prickled with goosebumps. I made sure the doors and the windows were all locked. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe there was an electrical issue. I would call the electrician if it happened again. I brought the dogs into my bedroom and shut and locked the door. Phone plugged in nearby. Gun went in the bedside table drawer. Normally I kept it locked tight in a safe. I swear I'm a responsible gun owner. But the light thing had me on edge, and the kids weren't there. I'd felt both relief and loneliness at being home alone before. Some anger at my ex for putting me in this position. Fear was new. I didn't like it much. As I lay in bed, I reassured myself that it was just me being silly. The doors and windows were all still locked, and I had 2 dogs who barked if anyone so much as walked past the house. If someone was here, I would know. I needed more sleep. That's why I must have forgotten to turn off the light twice. I fell asleep with my face to the door. I woke up to my dogs barking. It took one groggy second to realize that my bedroom door was open. It was still dark through the windows, but light streamed through the open door. I had 911 dialed before I'd formed my next full thought, and I fumbled in my drawer for my gun. My heart stopped as I emerged from my bedroom to find every light in the house on. I was sobbing on my neighbor's porch when the police car pulled up minutes later. My dogs barked from behind her front door as she did her best to comfort me with a blanket and a cup of tea. They searched the house but didn't find anyone. As kindly as they could, they asked if I was on any medications or if I'd been drinking. I wasn't, and a glass of wine didn't make me sleepwalk around my house and turn the lights on. They cleared me to go back in, but my neighbor offered to let me sleep in her spare room if I wanted, and I took her up on it. When I went back the next morning, it was with a heart that beat too quickly, and with dogs who could sense my nerves. We re-inspected every part of the house, but everything seemed fine. The lights were still on, probably left that way by the police though. It was fine. I checked every inch of that house, made sure all of the doors and windows were locked, and sat on the couch trying to decide what to do next. I got a locksmith. It was more expensive than I would have liked, especially asking them to get there that day, but rekeying all of the doors seemed like a good idea given that someone had entered my house and my locked bedroom door. I shivered thinking about it. I had one more night alone in the house, till next weekend. I wasn't sure if I felt worse about being alone or the possibility of someone trying this when my kids were here. I decided it was better that I was alone for it. I couldn't imagine the added terror of someone breaking in with my kids. When bedtime came, I was methodical, room by room, starting from the furthest point, turning off all of the lights. I made it to my room and glanced back down the hall. The kitchen light was on. I had started in the kitchen. Gun gripped by my hand, I took a step back down the hall. The light flipped off. I screamed and locked myself in my bedroom as I called the police. I spent the night at my neighbor's again. I called my ex-husband and explained the situation. I asked if the kids could stay with him while I figured out what was happening, and he agreed. In the morning, I called an alarm company, another expense I didn't need. They put sensors on each window and helped me install cameras at the front and back door. If someone triggered an alarm and I didn't punch in the code, they would send someone out. At least if whoever was messing with me tried something, they would be caught. That night, no lights were turned on as I made my way to bed. I barely slept, waking up from a dream of someone standing over me several times. I walked out of my bedroom and the lights were on. I called the police, who checked the house for the 3rd time in as many days and told me they couldn't find anyone. The sensors hadn't been triggered and there was no one on the cameras when I watched them. Was I doing this? Maybe I was sleepwalking. Stress could make you do that, couldn't it? That night, I triple-checked everything. The dog slept in my room with the door locked. I awoke to the sound of glass shattering. My bedroom door was open. Dogs nowhere in sight. Light flooded through the door. I ran to the kitchen and stopped just short of stepping in. The floor was covered in glass. My cabinets were all open. Every single glass, plate, and bowl were on my floor in pieces. I was on the phone with the dispatcher as I looked around frantically for my dogs. I heard Chloe bark and peered out the window into the dark. They were outside. After the police showed up, for the 4th night in a row, I cried myself back to sleep in my neighbor's spare bedroom. In the morning, she helped me clean up the glass, and we sat down and watched the security footage together. I wasn't sure how whoever was doing this had gotten in now that I had changed the locks and secured the windows. But surely they couldn't avoid being on camera as they lured my dogs out of the house. And yet, there was no one. We went through the footage for both the front and back door. No one comes anywhere near my front door. We slowed down frame by frame when we got to the point that the dogs went outside. The back door opens. My lights are already on. Chloe appears in the doorway, head cocked. Her ears are up as if she's paying attention to something, but she doesn't appear nervous or frightened. Max walks up next to her and appears to jump as if he were greeting someone. Then both dogs run outside. After a minute, the back door closes again. I need to move. I need to move now. I can't live here anymore. My neighbor helped me pack. It was a haphazard rush job. I stayed with her the next few nights and only packed during the day. Each morning when I came in, all of my lights were on. Boxes would be overturned. I got a nice apartment, similar living space size, really even if there's no backyard. I started moving boxes in at the end of every day. I was relieved when everything was moved in. I've been in my new apartment for a week, and today when I awoke, all of my lights were on. My wife, Sa-woon, and I knew the house was haunted when we moved in. The previous owner was upfront about it. It was part of the reason the place was so cheap. Well, officially it was because his dog and daughter had died here horribly. Just give them what they want and you'll be okay. He asked the realtor to tell us. She handed us the keys and smiled, shaking her head. Don't worry about all of that though. His psychosis is your gain. This place was a steal. It's not like the ghosts can just come out and tell you what they want, but they definitely have their ways of communicating. Like the first night we got here, I left a moving box full of plates on top of one of the dining room chairs. We woke up in the middle of the night to hear it crashing down. The plates all shattered into a million pieces and scattered all over the floor. And that's how we learned their first rule. Lesson 1. Always leave the chairs empty for the ghosts. Other rules would follow. We learned not to leave anything on the floor of the pantry after the ghosts wrote a nasty message and Cheerios all over the floor. We learned not to run the dryer at night after 2 fires. We weren't sure if the first one was from the ghosts or just a lint buildup. Sa-woon and I tried to make these little acts of revenge in stride, cleaning up the Cheerios, curse words, with a smile, and joking with each other about our picky house guests. For a while it seemed like things would be just fine. We listed out the rules on a small whiteboard affixed to the refrigerator so that we could continue to cohabitate. Lesson 5. No bananas in the house. Lesson 6. The car should always be parked in the driveway, never the garage. Lesson 7. No house plants. Maybe just no ferns. Worth investigating more. Lesson 8. Downstairs shades must be drawn down at night at all times. No exceptions. It became a bit of a game between us, each of us trying to remember all of the rules better than the other. But then one night, Sa-woon tried to get a glass of water downstairs after midnight. "Don't do it," I said. "They won't like it." I'm thirsty, she said. They can live with it. She went downstairs and I heard a scream. I ran downstairs to find her grabbing her foot in agony. She said she'd tried to get ice and then heard a loud snap. She looked down to see her big toe bent away from her foot at an impossible angle. Okay, I said. No ice after midnight? No ice at all? I took out a whiteboard marker. What do we write? I can't live here anymore, she said. We have to go. We'll never be able to afford another place like this, I told her. Especially now that interest rates are up. It's just ice, right? But she shook her head. I drove her to the ER in silence. The next morning, Sawoon tried packing her things. Don't do this, I said. Why did we leave our previous apartment? She asked, looking at me with cold, angry eyes. Huh? Why did we leave? Because it was too small. I lied. There had been a group of teens who lingered outside of the front of our building, the types who sat on cars and rolled packs of cigarettes into the sleeves of their t-shirts. Every day when Sawoon entered the building, they hurled insults at her, mocking her weight, sometimes her race, asking to see her naked. I had called the police several times to report them, but it never went anywhere. In time, we decided to move to the suburbs. You never stood up for me, she said after a bit. You should have fought those boys. You should have rattled a baseball bat or a crowbar at them. That's illegal. Before that, it was your mother's house. Almost a full year sleeping in separate rooms. Her house, her rules, I said. And whose house is this? She asked, zipping her suitcase shut. She drove off to her mother's house. The next morning, I woke up and went to the store. I bought bananas and a houseplant. I bought a shirt in a dark red color I knew the ghosts would hate. Finally, I texted Sawoon and told her I'd be a man she could be proud of. She didn't respond. Last of all, I took a single glass of water and placed it on a chair. Then I stood there as minutes passed, almost an hour. I stared into the emptiness of the dining room. Then, all of a sudden, the glass flew across the room and shattered on the wall. I stood in place, trying not to blink. Then one of the shards rose from the floor and moved slowly towards me. The shard pierced my ankle, drawing a line straight up my leg, working its way under my underwear and up my thigh. I tried not to flinch as blood pooled in a small puddle at my feet. This is my house, I said softly. Mine. The glass rose right up to my eye, and in that moment, I realized that the ghosts had died to make this their house. Was I willing to do the same? I blinked. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry. And then I got a broom to clean up the mess. Since then, I've been doing my best to keep playing by the rules. Lesson 15, don't make any noise when descending the stairs. Lesson 16, no hats inside. Lesson 17, do not enter the closet beneath the stairs, ever. And the final lesson had been hardest to swallow. At night, I must leave Sawoon's side of the bed empty. Must not even stretch a leg onto it. As I close my eyes, I feel something cold and damp settle onto her side. It will not let me look at it. My heart beats fast and my blood runs cold, but no matter how much I want to scream and sprint out of the house, I remind myself that if I just play by the rules, everything will be okay. Once, and only once, when I was 9 or 10, I spent the summer at my Uncle Pete's farm in the Appalachians. I knew Uncle Pete from our various encounters at birthdays, Christmases, and Thanksgivings. But I had never visited his farm, and I had never spent much time with the strange, silent old man. Despite this, my parents decided that it would be character building for me to help them out for the summer. They were probably motivated by the prospect of a few child-free months. Neither me nor my uncle were particularly happy about the arrangement. The farm lay on a sloping foothill, nestled in a wide open patch of field, surrounded by deep, dense forest. These are the kinds of woodland which are always wet, always damp and mossy and dewy to the touch. The property was pretty small, aside from the crooked old farmhouse. There was a cow shed, 3 pastures for the cattle, and a large cornfield which spanned the breadth of the forest edge. I became used to waking up early, helping to herd the cows to graze, assisting Uncle Pete in milking. The work was hard. I became perpetually sore and covered in small nicks and bruises as I came at odds with the elements. But I enjoyed the hardship. I enjoyed the rugged landscape and the fresh air and the feeling of a job well done. Sometimes Pete and I would go on long walks through the woods. Out there, when you are properly and completely isolated, time moves slower. It is only in a forest that you can truly view the cycle of life and rebirth, as mud and rot and weeds sprout new shoots and spores. Even death is not the end in a forest. Dead things still swell and writhe and multiply, constantly rejoining the great, intertwining web of the living, breathing wilderness. My uncle and I hardly ever spoke, but we both connected in mutual appreciation for the natural beauty around us. I remember Uncle Pete like that. Always quiet. He was a man who never wasted energy on speaking except when absolutely necessary. He would never use words when a grunt or a nod or a vague motion could suffice. He was getting on in age, but he was incredibly tough. Like an old sheepdog, grizzled and hardy. I couldn't imagine anything ever disturbing him, or knocking him from his calm, solemn stillness. One night, Pete and I were walking back up from the bottom of the southernmost field. A cow had just given birth. I can still remember kneeling in the mud and feeling the bloody, warm mass of the calf in my hands. It was later than usual, already. The total and enveloping darkness of the mountains had settled in. We were guided by the lights of the farmhouse and the bright full moon. It was as we reached the porch, and I turned to glance at that same moon, that I saw it. A long way off, right at the end of the cornfield, was a black silhouette. Against the pure white backdrop of the moon, it stood at the edge of the tree line. Although I could still make out no features, only its shape. I recognized 4 legs and a broad, powerful set of antlers. I gasped softly, my young self reveling in the complete stillness and size of the creature. I turned excitedly to Pete. "Look, Uncle Pete, is that a deer? Even for a stag, that's pretty big, right?" Uncle Pete wheeled very slowly to squint at where I was pointing. There was a long pause as he breathed in and out, still staring. The 3 of us, he and I and the black shape, we were motionless together for a moment. Then he replied softly, almost under his breath, "Ain't no deer." He turned around again and entered the house without looking back. I didn't even have time to question what he had said. Although I was confused, Uncle Peter was rarely the kind of man to explain himself, and I accepted that he knew these hills and everything in them like the back of his hand. I shrugged it off and I followed him into the house, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the dark silhouette, so boldly outlined against the moon, still standing so perfectly still. Briefly, it was removed from the line of sight, and when I had reached the kitchen window, it was gone, disappeared back into the trees. From my bed, I could see across the landing directly into Uncle Pete's room. That night, I awoke at some point late into the night. As my eyes flitted open, I saw Pete. He was sitting in his old rocking chair beside the window of his bedroom. In his hands, he held a large, high-powered flashlight. He had the flashlight beam pointed out of the open window, trained at the tree line. Again, I was confused, but I was also tired. My eyes closed again, and I slept. I thought little of it in the morning. It was only now, so many years later, that I tried to put all the memories together. The next week, Uncle Pete had to make the long drive to the nearest town for his monthly supply run, buying canned food, replacement tools, fuel for his Jeep. Uncle Pete, unwilling to take me with him, was not fazed by the prospect of leaving a 9 or 10-year-old on their own in an isolated farmhouse. It was a day and a night's journey to town. Pete would be back in the morning, and I would spend the night alone. On the night in question, I had already spent 2 nights on my own like that. In previous months on the farm, I went about my usual routine, making a sandwich for myself and then turning on the television. It would have been about 10 or 11 at night. I liked to go to bed late when I was on my own. I was glued to the TV screen. I remember there was a light rain, and the house was buffeted by low-level but persistent wind. Gradually, above the noise of the television, I began to hear something from outside. I cocked my ear to listen properly, and I muted whatever program I was watching. I wasn't worried yet. You hear all sorts of sounds out in the country at night. I went over to the back door and stepped outside. Immediately I was hit by a really weird feeling. I can't explain it or even really describe it, but as I stood there, rain trickling down my face, I felt inexplicably certain that something was deeply and terribly wrong. Now I could make out that the sounds were coming from the cow shed, several hundred yards away from the farmhouse. The cows were making a lot of noise. I could hear them mooing and snorting and kicking the corrugated iron walls of the shed. At hearing the commotion from the animals, I began to grow nervous about the possibility of a coyote or even a black bear nearby. I scanned the almost impenetrable darkness of the fields. Then, all at once, the noise stopped. It was as if every cow had silenced at the exact same instant. Now it was just me, standing alone in the silent night, and then, out of the darkness, a voice began to call my name. Michael. The voice was deep and slow, and cracked on each syllable of my name, a shuddering rasp. It mixed with the wind and became almost a echoing howl. I stepped back inside and locked the back door. Then I closed all of the windows and I turned off all the lights in the house. I sat down on the couch in front of the television, catatonic with fear, tears streaming down my face. Once, twice, 3 times that ghastly voice circled the house, still calling out my name. Michael. I sat, nails digging into the flesh of my thighs, shaking uncontrollably. For what must have been 15 minutes, there was a deathly silence. I began to wonder if perhaps I had imagined that awful voice. Then from behind me, I heard a faint, almost indiscernible sound. It was a dull impact against the large kitchen window, the one which looked out over the vast cornfield. Clunk, clunk, clunk. It didn't sound deliberate. It wasn't a noise meant to toy with me or make me turn around. It was an unintentional sound, the kind produced when something large attempts to go unnoticed. It sounded like antlers scraping against glass. There was another agonizing pause and then the voice again. "It's so cold out here, Michael. Won't you let me in?" Now that the voice was so close, just outside, I could hear how wrong its cadence was. It was utterly alien. It sounded as if the speaker knew what sounds to make, but had no grasp of the words or their meaning, could not produce anything except the correct vocal contractions in the right order. Still violently shaking but compelled by something deep and unnatural within me, I turned my head to face the window. Where the pale moon should have been, there was nothing. A black silhouette was blocking the window with its form. I was sitting in the dark, but I strained my eyes to differentiate the shape of the figure from the night sky behind it. I could hardly make out anything. I think that it was squatting on all fours, or maybe resting on its haunches. Only the outline of a wide, misshapen set of antlers was unmistakable. The pitiful blue glare of the television gave me just enough light to see the thing's face. Its wet snout was pressed against the glass of the window. The dim glow allowed me to make out that its skin and hair was stretched out far too tight over its skull. I remember feeling that the shaking was getting worse. I remember black spots dancing across my eyes. I remember nausea and the feeling of falling. I woke up splayed in the middle of the living room floor. I got up, rubbed my head in time to see Uncle Pete's Jeep appear from the trees and pull up the farmhouse. I never told Uncle Pete about that night, about the things I heard and saw, partly because I was sure I wouldn't be believed, and partly because I was still deciding if I dared to believe it myself. Christ, I was just a 10-year-old kid. I only had a few days left to spend at the farm. I stuck by Pete's side at all times, and I didn't look out of any of the windows after dark. Thankfully, we didn't go on any walks through the woods. As I grew older, I tried a mixture of repression and denial about my memories of the farm. I never visited again. I think I managed to achieve some semblance of forgetting, however unhealthy or damaging it was to bury my fears. At last I reached a point where all I would feel was a shiver up my spine and a vague sense of unease whenever I glanced up at a full moon, or walked through dense trees in the twilight. That was until a few years ago, when it all came flooding back. Uncle Pete is gone. Some of the people who knew him in town noticed when he failed to arrive for his monthly supply run. When he missed the next one too, they sent someone down to see if the old man was all right, and he was just gone. His Jeep was still in the driveway. There were no signs of a struggle. The house looked untouched, although the front door was wide open. There were no footprints anywhere around the house or the surrounding fields. Everyone accepted that he must have had a dizzy spell or a fall when walking through the woods. They combed the mountains and forests for miles, but they never found a body. The only clue they ever found, the only thing at all that was out of place or wrong, was a set of cloven hoof prints, imprinted in the mud, leading up to the farmhouse and then away again. Everyone dismissed these tracks. I'm the only one who can't stop thinking about why they were found in sets of 2, not 4. I'm the only one who can't stop thinking about what it was that came up to the house on its hind legs and carried Uncle Pete away, far off, deep into the hills and the trees and the dark. It is, of course, the classic cliché, but my wife and I still decided to move after what happened. We had horrible nightmares from the incident, and we're just glad that we seemed to survive as a family. But still, We wanted to get out of the house, which made us both remember what happened each and every day. Maybe it was the universe giving us something good or just pure dumb luck, but we found a house that was essentially our dream house. I know that every homeowner says that about their house, but it truly was an amazing deal. It had enough bedrooms to give both of our 2 boys their own room, and for my wife and me, each one office. It had a garden, which meant that we could finally fulfill my wife's dream of harvesting our own vegetables and fruits. And it was only 5 minutes away from her parents. Since she wanted to be closer to them anyway, it seemed perfect. Sure, we had to renovate it first. There was an ant problem, and my God, at night the house was louder than my wife's snoring. But we still settled on it quickly. It took some time to acclimate to everything. The move on top of our 7-year-old Andrew being our oldest now, and us having to give away all of our daughter's belongings. It might seem harsh, and earned a lot of hurtful comments from some people, especially my parents. We're not talking anymore, but none of us could stand to handle any of her things without almost breaking down. The loss of our daughter might have been the worst thing to happen to us. But then it became so much worse. My therapist encouraged me to type it all out and post it here, so maybe this helps. I cannot bring myself to start with the death of my daughter, so you'll have to settle up with the aftermath. Bear with me. I know this text will be a mess. I think it all started with Tim, our other son, losing his tooth. He was incredibly excited, proudly displaying it to us, and then his teachers in daycare. In the evening, after I had put him in bed, he made a shushing motion and lifted his pillow to show me his tooth laying underneath it. I chuckled and ruffled his hair. Well, if you've been a good kid today, then I'm quite sure that the Tooth Fairy will exchange it for a gift, I told him. He nodded along. What do you think she'll leave with me? Maybe some marshmallows? I don't know if the Tooth Fairy would give you sweets. Remember, those make your teeth sick. The next morning, the Tooth Fairy had left him a new small stuffed animal. He was over the moon and carried it with him the entire day, until my wife, Mary, who was worried that we would have to put it in the laundry on the first evening of him having it, but it seemed to calm him a lot. So we didn't say anything. Dad? I turned around to see Andrew standing behind me. Tim stood behind him, awkwardly clinging to the sleeve of Andrew's pajamas. Both looked up with the excitement only 2 brothers under 10 can bring up. Do you think the Tooth Fairy also accepts other things? Tim asked. Maybe I can trade some of my toys for better ones. Andrew scrunched up his face. I told him that the Tooth Fairy wouldn't, because it's the Tooth Fairy. But maybe there are other kinds of fairies. I did my best to make an exaggerated thinking face. I think the Tooth Fairy only shows up for your teeth, and I don't really know of any other fairy that would trade the things from under your pillow. Sorry, Tim. He looked so disappointed. I almost felt with him. Well, your teeth are just your mouth bones, right? Andrew asked slowly. You should definitely stop sleeping with one arm under your pillow then. Tim looked horrified and looked like he was about to cry. I quickly intervened and reassured him that the Tooth Fairy wouldn't try to take his arm away. Both boys seemed unsatisfied with the answer, but did go to bed without a fuss then. The next morning, Tim was quite sulky at breakfast and reluctantly told us that he had placed a Matchbox car under his pillow, and besides jabbing him in the cheek, nothing had happened. Andrew almost laughed out loud and told him that he should make an experiment out of it, to see what the Tooth Fairy would deem an acceptable trade and what not. That seemed to cheer Tim up. It was heartwarming to see our boys bonding again. They had been so cold to each other following the incident, and we had been worried sick over what and how much exactly Andrew had seen that day. But he seemed to slowly recover from losing his sister. Our therapist also said that behavioral changes were to be expected, and especially if Andrew had seen anything, that would absolutely explain his coldness, which Tim then of course reciprocated. But now both were eating their cereal and discussing which toys or things to put under their pillows. It seemed like everything was on a very good track. In fact, the entire day seemed to be very nice. Mary and I had a lunch date when we saw each other in the cafeteria at the same time. We worked in the same building but different firms. And when we had gotten the boys from daycare and school, we settled on a picnic in the park. Tim especially seemed to respond very well to visits to this park, probably because he missed the playground. Andrew also liked going there, even though oftentimes older teenagers from school he knew and hated would hang around there. When we came home, Andrew asked Tim if he wanted to help him with his homework. Seeing both working on the kitchen table, Andrew doing his math homework and Tim doodling on some paper, it almost reminded me of the time before the incident. It was bittersweet. I want to try for another baby. Mary had asked her parents to take the boys for one evening, and I was looking forward to spending one uninterrupted evening with my wife. But what she said almost made me fall out of my shoes. Are you sure? We don't know if one of the boys won't be acting up again, and you are still recovering from losing her. We both are, I said gingerly. Mary shook her head. It has been almost a year. We got a second chance here with our 2 boys. A fresh start. I would love to expand our family. Just imagine how much life a baby would bring to the house. I cocked my head. Is this about your pregnant coworker? Mary looked almost insulted. That's not... Okay, maybe it is what started the thought, but I really do think I'm ready. Have you seen the boys interacting with each other? It's better than ever. She left the rest unsaid, but I perfectly understood. Our boys had not gotten along well after the incident, and Mary was right. The new house had been a great fresh start, and it came with great changes, but we had settled here, and now was as good as any other time to think about a baby. I nodded slowly. The house is a bit big for only 4 people. Andrew must have seen my wife Googling some baby-related things because he was very moody when I checked in on him during the homework time. Hey, what's wrong? You know that I can't read your mind and just tell why you're upset. He looked angry and confused. Why do you want another baby? The last time did not work out very well, he said, showing me clearly that he was still not completely happy with his brother. I had to swallow a lump and remind myself that he was allowed to be upset. It's okay to feel like this, but your mom and I would still like to have a bigger family. And I'm sure that you will be best friends with another baby in no time. He nodded slowly, and I could swear I could watch actual wheels turn in his head. Then, like nothing happened, he just asked for cookies. Kids are weird, man. I woke up because Andrew was screaming bloody murder. I rushed into his room to see him clutching his arm, his pajamas tinted in a shade of red they should not display, and crying his eyes out. I was close to a panic attack at this point, but after cleaning his arm in the bathroom and assessing the damage, I could see that they were nasty scratches for sure, but nothing I couldn't treat at home. Mary, still drowsy from taking a sleeping pill this evening, tended to Tim whilst I bandaged Andrew's arm. He insisted that he had been wakened by the tooth fairy who wanted to steal his arm, but he could pull away, hence the scratches. He described her with a hideous face and lumpy hair, and was adamant that she had come out of his closet. Coincidentally, in which his Halloween costume, consisting of a mask depicting a monster and a cheap wig, waited for its great debut on Old Hallows Eve. Of course, we made sure to check the entire house for any fairies and let Andrew sleep in our bed that night, but it was still deeply unsettling for this to happen now. We brought it up with our therapist and asked her what could be the cause of Andrew doing that to himself. She reassured us that, well, it was concerning, and we should monitor sharp objects in his vicinity even more. It was most probably a cry for more attention, and that we should focus on bonding with him more in the next few weeks. So we asked Mary's parents for their help and organized the next Saturday to revolve entirely around Andrew. His brother stayed with his grandparents, and we took Andrew to his favorite museum, the park, and let him choose a new toy at the mall. He seemed to enjoy it, but he clung to my hand almost the entire time. Even after countless reassuring promises that he still was our little boy, and of course he was equally as important as his brother and any potential future siblings, he still refused to admit that he scratched himself. We could only make him promise to yell for help should this ever happen again. He seemed a bit more at ease after this, and we went to pick up Tim from my in-laws. Our dinner was peaceful, with both boys eating their vegetables and no food being thrown. I really thought we were doing okay. What a fool I was. The next morning, Andrew's bandages were stripped away and the wounds opened again. He hadn't called for help or screamed when it happened, which only made us more sure that he was doing this for attention. Even our therapist couldn't tell us what was wrong and just strongly advised us to put gloves on his hands, in case he did it subconsciously, and let him sleep in our room. But that did not help at all. The next week, every day Andrew woke up with bloody arms, each day looking more devastated. It took a toll on us all, of course. Mary was constantly torn between nightmares and insomnia, to the point where I had to promise to hold watch so that she could take some sleeping pills and sleep for a few hours. The next weekend we had another day just with Andrew, letting Tim stay with his grandparents again. He could not thank Mary's parents enough. Andrew's mood seemed to brighten a little, and he enjoyed himself when we visited a petting zoo, and he could see his favorite animal, mountain goats. He was chattering the entire way home, giving us bits of information about the animal, with the occasional plea to build a mountain in the garden, such that some ghosts might move in there. It was almost as if we had our boy back. He even played with Tim in the evening, both of them racing through the entire house, until Tim almost tripped over the rug in the living room, and we called them both to the dinner table. The next morning was the first in almost 2 weeks where I did not wake up to the sight of Andrew clutching his arm. Instead, he was sleeping soundly in his bed, not reacting at all when I quietly called out for him. I almost wept in joy when I realized he had finally slept through the night. Even Mary was still sleeping. So, I decided to make some breakfast. It had been a long time since we had some breakfast in bed. Tim was quietly playing in his room, and he did not want to help me prepare the food, so I went to freshen up in the bathroom, before heading into the kitchen. When I came back to wake up Mary and Andrew, I was in for a nasty surprise. Neither of them were waking up. My heart almost stopped when I realized that the sleeping Andrew had his blanket draped over him in a way that concealed a huge puddle of blood pooling near his stomach, and that he was missing a good part of the skin on his hand. My heart sank so far down into my stomach upon the sight. I immediately called an ambulance, even more worried when I realized that Mary was also unconscious. What had happened here? Both were breathing, although I only now noticed that Andrew's breathing was way too shallow. I tried to put a bandage on Andrew's hand, but it was soaked in seconds. How long had he been bleeding? Only when I heard the sirens in the distance did I remember Tim. Oh no. What if he saw any of this? I raced to his room, but I could not find him anywhere. Everything was a mess. When the paramedics and police arrived, they instantly transported my wife and son to the hospital, but the police urged me to stay behind because they had a few questions for me. It quickly became clear that they were not treating me as a suspect, and also not concerned for the safety of Tim. Instead, they asked me if we had been to the park with him in the last few weeks. What an odd question that had been at that time. My entire family was in shambles. My wife and son in the hospital and my other son missing, and they were worried about the park. I almost lashed out at them, but they managed to rob me of all my energy quickly with some information. Sir, your son was seen in the park talking to his old acquaintances. Is it possible that he regained his memory? I almost fainted at that thought. Now, you see, Tim had always been special. When he was little, his mood had changed very quickly, as it was with most children. But when he got older, his mood swings got worse and alternated between him being a relatively normal little boy and him doing the most vicious things. When he was a toddler, he would always throw anything in his immediate vicinity at Mary and me, until we had to secure most cabinets and dressers such that he did not have access to them. On his 9th birthday, he had threatened Mary with the knife with which she wanted to cut his birthday cake, because he changed his mind last minute and didn't want chocolate cake anymore. When he was 12, his school informed us that he had been caught smoking with some older boys just outside the school premises. We put him in therapy and it seemed to improve his behavior somewhat. His therapist said that there was no diagnosis for his behavior, but that could change once he reached 18, and then he could also be medicated. Oh, how we were looking forward to that. When he was 14, he ran away. It felt incredibly wrong, but Mary and I almost cried happy tears when the police told us they couldn't locate him. After half a year, Mary fell pregnant, and although we had not planned for that at all, we decided to keep the baby. Our baby boy Andrew was born a happy and healthy boy. Sure, he also cried a lot and was not the easiest baby, but compared to Tim, he was the best behaved and sweetest little angel. Andrew never knew his violent older brother, and we were hoping it would stay like this until he was old enough to grasp the concept of mental health and its problems. But then when Andrew was 5, Mary got pregnant again, this time with a baby girl. We were happy. This time it was planned. We were overjoyed, but then 6 months pregnant, Mary got a phone call from the police telling us that Tim was back, and he was back with a serious drug problem. Of course, we sent him to the best rehab facility we could find, but that just made him angry. After 7 weeks, he escaped and paid us a visit at home. We argued, and I attempted to get him in my car to bring him back to the facility. But even though he was weak from rehab, he lunged forward and managed to push Mary. If only we hadn't been standing right next to the open front door. If only I had a better grasp on his arms. If only Mary had been standing further in the hallway. My poor Mary tumbled down the 3 steps, and suddenly there was so much blood everywhere. In the panic and mess, Tim escaped. Mary got transported to the hospital, but that night I almost lost her. We lost our baby, but the doctors could revive Mary, thank God. This time is still hazy for me. I don't remember everything correctly, but 1 week after Mary had been sent home from the hospital, we were called to the psych ward. Tim had been admitted there after he had been treated for an overdose. Somehow it had erased his memory almost completely. Mentally, our son was 5 years old again. The doctors and psychiatrists assured us that this was uncommon, but most probably permanent. Now the sight of him triggered so many emotions. most of them bad, but after half a year, we were asked to take him home. Because he seemed stable and couldn't stay at the psych ward full time, we said yes. He would be in daycare during work hours, where he would receive therapy and educational lessons, would be regularly assessed, and we could admit him to the ward again if we noticed anything too unusual. But we didn't. The doctors predicted that Tim would mentally stay 5 for the rest of his life. And with the right medication, his mood swings would be gone. This was an amazing second chance for us with him. After we had lived with Tim again for a year, we moved to the new house. You know the rest. I want to implore everyone to be very cautious. The psychiatrist theorized that Tim must have regained his memory when he visited the park where he used to meet with his friends. He must have pretended to still be 5 years old to get revenge on us. He must have been so angry, filled with hate and spite for us. After multiple tests, doctors confirmed that Tim had mixed sleeping pills into our dinner to render us incapable of reacting to his vile doings for so long. He could hurt Andrew easily, using his Halloween costume to fool Andrew and to make us believe our sweet little boy would hurt himself. When he had accidentally put too much in our food and realized that he had made a mistake, he fled, the police said. I am beyond devastated. Mary and Andrew haven't woken up so far, and I feel like I'm going insane without them. Every day I read to them and I talk to them, but I just want to see my wife smile again, or hear Andrew giggle. But what pushed me over the edge was the news the police brought me today. Tim had tried to do it again, with another family 2 states over. The local police forces have dubbed him the Bone Fairy, after everything they knew about our case. Please, everyone, be safe out there. I raced down the creaky escalator, past the cheesy advertisements which looked as if they haven't been replaced any time in the last decade. It was still a while before I would reach the platform, and I was already hearing the shriek-like symphony of the brakes as the Soviet-era train made its way into the empty station, lit only by a few flickering yellow lights. Panicked, I glanced at my watch, causing me to stumble over my feet and hit my head on the rubber handrail running alongside me. I woke up in pitch darkness. Feeling around my pants, I uncovered many cuts and bruises, but most importantly, my phone. As I tapped the screen with my disfigured fingers, it lit up, blinding me with light. Seconds later, as I read the time and my memories came rushing back, I was blinded by something much worse. Fear. 12:58 a.m. No, it can't be. I tried to scream, but only a raspy whisper came out. I quickly understood that this was for my own good, though, as I realized that this wasn't simply a bad dream. It was reality. I sat in silence for what felt like hours. I never thought this moment would come. I always told myself that I wouldn't risk it, that I would be careful, yet here I was, fallen victim to my own impatience, and soon, I reckon, the victim of something worse than death. Hey, I just thought of something. If you find this and you're not from around here, I reckon you wouldn't know what the hell I am talking about. I'll explain, but every tap of the screen is painful, so I will try to be quick. I was young when the rumors started, and yeah, that's just what they were to me back then. Rumors. Every city has their own unique set of creepy legends that terrify school children and keep teenagers in check. Don't get me wrong. Most of the rumors here in Redacted are just that. Unfortunately though, and I hate to be cliche, but this one was just different. And not in a good way. Listen, I'm not sure if I have much more time before those things find me. It's already 2 a.m. and the noises are getting closer. Any attempts to move result in a sharp pain in my back, causing me to stumble and crash back to the ground. I fear that crawling will have me falling down into the tracks, meaning they'll get to me even quicker. Even if I wanted to use my phone's flashlight, I want to conserve as much of the 12% of remaining battery as I can. And I don't reckon what I would see would be pretty anyway. I can see them. Their eyes, at least. The faint glows of red remind me of my car's cigar lighter. I should have taken my car today. I can see them watching. Dozens, if not hundreds, in each tunnel. I don't have much time left. If you find this, please, just please remember, don't stay in the metro after midnight. This document was found in the notes application of an iPhone 6 in the sewers of Redacted. Redacted doesn't have a metro system. I'm writing this in hopes someone might be able to help before it's too late. It all started about a month ago when I was walking home from the bar I work at. It was late by then, and the small town I live in looked like a ghost town. It was honestly pretty creepy, and I quickened my step, thankful my house was only a few blocks away. I took out my phone and checked the time, 12:32 a.m., and that was when I saw him. I was in the process of putting my phone back in my pocket when I happened to glance across the street and noticed the man standing stock still under a street light. He looked to be about 6, maybe 7 feet tall, but it was hard to tell because he wore a very dirty, very old trench coat. For some reason, the sight of him standing there got to me, and I sped walk the rest of the way home, constantly checking over my shoulder just in case he chose to follow me. I breathed a sigh of relief as I turned onto the pavement leading up to my door and made my way inside, almost unconsciously locking the door behind me. I quickly shook off the creepy feelings from before and plopped down on the couch to eat dinner and relax before bed. The rest of the evening went by fast. I watched a few programs on the TV and decided it was probably time to head upstairs to get some sleep. I made my way up the stairs and to my room at the end of the hall, making sure to turn off all the lights on the way there. Growing up, my dad had always screamed at me for leaving the lights on, saying I would cost him millions, and I guess the rule stuck with me to my adult years. I got to my room and shut the door behind me and began my nighttime routine to get ready for bed. After all that was finished, I slipped between the covers and closed my eyes, ready for the morning. All of a sudden, I jerked awake and checked the time. 5 a.m. Way too early to be up, but my body had needs. I quickly used the bathroom and drank some water and headed back to bed, repeating the chore of turning all the lights off. As I crossed my room, I heard a very loud noise outside and jumped. I ran to my window and looked outside, trying to see the source of the disturbance. I held my breath anxiously as I heard more sounds approaching from down the street, getting closer by the moment. I let out a sigh of relief as a couple of drunken teenagers appeared from around the corner of the street and down the sidewalk, singing loud rap songs and swaying back and forth, more than likely on their way home from a party. They passed my house and continued on, still singing until they disappeared, engulfed by the early morning fog. I turned to go back to bed and froze in my tracks, my eyes fixed to the street below. There, standing maybe 5 houses away, was the same man from before, barely visible despite the street lamp he was standing under. Had he followed me home? The thought escaped my lips, and I started at the sound of my own voice, looking away for a few seconds to compose myself. I glanced at the street again, but he had vanished. I looked every direction, but I couldn't see him, so I gave up and returned to bed, giving in to sleep. Things after that were pretty normal. I went to work, came home, slept, and did the whole thing again. I hadn't seen the man since that night and pretty much forgotten about him until a week ago when I decided to have my friend Stacy stay the night. She was a nice girl I had met at work, and we had become fast friends, bonding over our love for horror movies. A horror movie, in fact, was the reason she was coming over that night. Some new slasher I hadn't heard of had recently come out, and she wanted to watch it with me, so we planned a sort of sleepover, complete with snacks. I had just finished setting out the various chips and popcorn I had when the doorbell rung, and I went to open the door. There stood Stacy, a slightly troubled look on her face, and I invited her inside, asking her what was the matter. She set down her coat and turned to me. "Did you see the man who was behind me on the sidewalk?" Her words made my blood run cold, and I quickly walked over to the door and peered through the peephole. Once I was satisfied no one stood there, I turned back and we both headed into the living room, trying to lighten the mood by talking about the new movie. We sat down, and she put it on, and I quickly forgot about the events of earlier and became engrossed in the movie. It was actually pretty good. We watched the movie, talked and ate snacks till the credits came on, and it was time for bed. The couch pulled out into a small mattress, so that's where she slept, and I headed up to my room, once again turning every light off on the way. I stopped for a moment beside my bedroom window, but saw nothing outside and got into my bed, quickly succumbing to sleep. Maybe about an hour later I woke up to a slam downstairs and ran down to see the front door hanging open, and Stacy slowly walking across the porch and down the steps. "Hey Stacy, what's going on?" I called, but no answer. It's as if she was in a trance. I went to go grab her and get her back in the house, but stopped dead in my tracks as I looked at who, or should I say what, she was walking towards. It was the man, except this time he looked impossibly tall. He wasn't wearing his trench coat. Instead, where the coat should have been was a long cut in the man's chest and stomach, and through the gash was unfolding hundreds of arms, long and ghostly white, which reached to grab Stacy. I couldn't move as I watched her get snatched up and seemingly pulled into the man's torso, her body crunching and cracking as the arms stuffed her corpse inside. After that, he smiled at me and put his trench coat back on, raising a finger in a shushing motion, and walked down the street. Finally, my legs started working again. I collapsed onto the carpet, trying to make sense of what I had seen. That thing had just shoved my coworker into its body. What if it would come back for me, unsatisfied with its meal tonight? I slammed the door and shakily made my way to the bathroom. After emptying the contents of my stomach, I wiped my mouth and sat down on the toilet, still in shock from what had happened. I went to my room and looked down upon the street below, looking for any sign I wasn't losing my mind. When no sign showed itself, I gave up and went to bed, or at least tried to. I woke the next morning with a massive headache and called into work sick. I popped a couple of Advil and sat down on the couch, rubbing my temples. All of a sudden I heard a knock at the door and jumped slightly, the events of last night still playing in my mind. I hesitantly made my way to the front door and looked outside, but saw nothing. I opened the door and looked down to see a piece of paper laying on my welcome mat. I picked it up and turned it over to see two words that sealed my fate. "You're next." I haven't been to work in 2 weeks, and I refuse to leave the house, even when friends keep calling me to hang out. I know if I go outside, he will get me. There was one night recently I woke up to find myself downstairs with my hand on the front door ready to open it. I immediately pulled away and ran back upstairs. Since then, I lock my bedroom door. I know he's coming for me, and I don't know how long I have till he gets me. Please, if anyone can help me. Please. I don't want to die. It started as a normal day. I woke up, brushed my teeth, brushed my hair, ate cereal, got dressed, and drove to school. When I got there, something was obviously off. I mean, if you didn't see anyone at your school, would it be off to you too? My first thought was that I had come too early, or maybe it was a holiday. I checked, 7:45 a.m. I was on time. It was just any other Wednesday. No holidays, no PTA meeting. I went to my homeroom. No one was there. There were backpacks sitting next to the desks. There was writing on the board. It was as if everyone had just vanished into thin air. I walked around the school for a little while, looking in the different classes, peeking in storage rooms, opening and entering places I had never been before. I looked in the cafeteria, the courtyard, all the classrooms, the track and soccer field, and even the break room. No one was anywhere. There was one place left to check. The gym. I jogged across the cafeteria, through the double doors that led to the 10th and 11th grade classes, and down the corridor that led to the auditorium and gym. I peeked inside the auditorium and saw no one. I walked inside the gym. Everyone was sitting there. Some were in chairs in the middle of the floor, some on the bleachers, some were standing. Every single person, the 493 students and 173 staff, the 5 security guards, and even some parents, all of them were there. The strange part was that even with the 493 students, 173 staff, 5 security guards, and some parents, it was completely silent. The only sound was the door opening and closing. My breath quickened. My heart beat faster. It was so suddenly eerie. What made it worse was that everyone, literally everyone, was staring at me, not blinking, not talking, not pointing or laughing, just staring. It was petrifying, absolutely, morbidly, horrifyingly petrifying. It sent my anxiety through the roof. It made the hairs on my arms straight. It gave me goosebumps and sent chills down my spine. I made my way to one of the chairs and began to take my backpack off. While all of their eyes stared at me, gaping at me like I was an alien, before I could sit down, I heard someone say, "Run." It was almost a whisper. I wouldn't have heard it if there was any noise at all. I don't know who said it, or why, but they did. It was enough for me. In one swift movement, I swung my backpack on and kicked my chair behind me. Suddenly, everyone in the room was standing and walking or running towards me. They hadn't taken their eyes off of me. I sprinted out of the gym, down the corridor, through the cafeteria, down the main lobby, out the front door, through the parking lot, to the gas station across the street. When I got there, no one was there either. I swiped a few bottles of water from the freezer, tossed them in my backpack, and grabbed a few bags of chips, too. I hid in the bathroom the moment I saw them exit the building. I locked the door. I barricaded it with the rack full of toilet paper rolls. I pushed my body against it. I turned off all the lights and was as quiet as I could be. I spent a week in that room. Eventually I got the courage to come out. When I did, no one was there. Nothing was abnormal. The clerk was serving a customer and waved a cheery hello to me. I was trembling. I walked out and downtown to the police station. I told them my story and they kept me there until my parents came to pick me up. They thought I was crazy. It took me 2 months to go back to school. I don't know what happened or why. Maybe I got caught in a temporary loophole that sent me to an alternate universe, and once space realized it, it just sent me back. I don't know. Maybe it was real, or maybe I am crazy. I have lived in fear of the starers ever since. I don't leave my house without a backpack of fully stocked survival gear. Am I crazy? Am I sane? I recently started university. I had to move to a dorm because campus is far away from home. I moved into a standalone dorm house with 5 rooms. Me and one of my friends both ended up in the same house. I haven't really talked with the other 3 people living here. They're barely here anyways. The dorm owner, Carl, is a friendly guy. He's always smiling and making jokes. Sometimes he can be corny, but it's better than having a creepy dorm owner. Our contract states that every weekend they come to collect the trash. Carl made additional mention to this when handing me the key. What I didn't notice back then, but probably should have, is how he worded it. And remember, every weekend they come to collect the trash. The first week was a bit eerie, but I find that's normal when living somewhere new. You'll notice all the smaller details, the little sounds, every creak. It's something you get used to after a while, but it made the first couple of nights a sleepless hell. It doesn't matter that I could hear the neighbors arguing every single night. I finally got some rest the 3rd night. After that, I stopped locking my door at night. I know rationally speaking I didn't have to lock it. The rest of the week went by relatively smoothly. I had to adapt to university and living alone. I am lucky I have my parents to support me and pay for my bills. When the first weekend came around, I was woken up at 10 a.m. by the sound of the front door opening and closing. I figured it was Carl collecting the trash like he said would happen. Now that I was awake, I really had to pee, but to avoid social interaction, I waited until he left. After about 30 minutes, the door opened and closed again, so I went downstairs to use the toilet. Out of curiosity, I checked the trash cans. As expected, they were emptied. The second week went by and I decided to head home over the weekend. When I came back on Sunday, the bins were once again empty. I was the first one back home, it seems. Everyone leaves over the weekend. I have decided I would stay at my dorm whenever I want to work for school. I knew that if I went home, I would get distracted easily anyways. On week 3, I stayed at the dorm again. On Saturday, I heard the door at 9 a.m. and decided to get up and work for school. At around noon, I was about to head downstairs to get a glass when I heard the front door again. I waited a couple seconds but didn't hear anything. At first, I assumed it was Carl leaving, but then realized it had been 3 hours since he supposedly entered. Maybe it was one of my dorm mates who forgot to mention he was still home. It was weird, but I didn't think too much about it. I wasn't home again for week 4. For week 5, however, because of the slightly off-putting experience from week 3, I wanted to see what Carl was up to when he came to collect the trash. I know it sounds a bit rash, but I suffer from GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, so I decided to do this to calm myself. I fully expected nothing to really come from it. On Saturday, I decided to head downstairs at 9 a.m. That way I would surely see Carl. I waited downstairs for hours until 1 p.m. I figured he might be coming tomorrow instead. He did say they would come on the weekend, not specifically on Saturday. I went back upstairs, and the second I closed my door, I heard the front door open. To say I was freaked out would be an understatement. But I gathered some courage and decided to go back downstairs, only to find nobody there. The front door hadn't opened a second time, so whoever came in should still be there. I checked the trash, and to my surprise, it was empty. When things got weird and scary, your mind does two things. It tries to rationalize the situation, and it comes up with the most illogical explanations at the same time. But with this, there was no rational explanation. Even if I just didn't hear the door the second time, no way he was able to empty 2 full trash cans in just 10 seconds and disappear afterwards. I went back to my room and locked my door again. I texted my friend about it, but he didn't respond. He could very well just be busy. Only then I realized whoever opened the door is still in the house. But who the hell do you call in these situations? I mean, cops won't believe you, and my parents will just think I imagine things. So I did what any logical person would do. I locked myself in my room until Monday, when my dorm mates return. After about an hour, I get a text back from my friend. He responds thinking I'm just setting up some sort of joke. I mean, I don't blame him for thinking that, but I also know he won't believe me. I've been very dedicated when making jokes before. It's like the boy who cried wolf. Throughout the rest of the weekend, I heard nothing except the ambient sounds of my neighbors fighting. When I finally hear people arrive on Monday, I leave my room. First course of action is going to the electronics store next door. I'm not staying here this weekend. I'm not crazy, but I am going to install a camera. Friday rolls around and I place the camera somewhere hidden, looking at the trash cans. During the weekend, I can't stop thinking about what I'll see when I return. I decided to take the train on Monday extra early instead of on Sunday evening just to be safe. When I arrived back at the dorm, the trash was empty. I take the camera, head to my room, and lock the door behind me. I spent hours looking over the footage trying to find something, but there's nothing. Not a single person entered the frame, nothing interacted with the trash cans. I frantically look through the video trying to find something. Maybe a splice, a time skip, but there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. As scary as this is, now I have proof. I wait for my friend to arrive and practically drag him into my room. I drag my mouse through the preview slider to show him nobody was here all weekend. He just gives me a dead stare and says, "You're not fooling me. Just because you're moving fast over the preview bar doesn't mean I don't see him." That sentence sent chills down my spine. I asked him who he saw, and he took my mouse and dragged it to Saturday, 10 a.m. I'm not blind. I can clearly see him. He sighed and he turned around to leave the room, but I stopped him. I asked him to trust me. "I don't see anyone on the camera." He told me if I was really worried, I should just call Carl and ask him about it. I could tell he was worried about me, but just didn't believe me. However, I hadn't considered calling Carl. He probably has an explanation. At least, I hope he does. This is all becoming a bit too much for me. I can handle things. I've trained myself to control my fear, but this isn't something irrational. This is real. I called Carl, hoping to finally have an explanation. When he picked up, I started ranting. I told him everything that had happened, only to be met with bone-chilling silence. After what felt like an eternity, he simply said, "Don't leave your room when they arrive," and hung up. I tried calling back, but he didn't answer. I couldn't go home regardless of what had happened. I couldn't miss class. Believe it or not, being haunted is not a valid reason to skip class, and because of the study point system, I couldn't really afford to fail, literally. I would avoid leaving my room whenever I can. I'd use the bathroom in school, I'd skip showering altogether, and would keep all my food in my room. I only left to go to class, otherwise I would be sitting safely behind my locked door. Sleeping was hard, but I managed. It wasn't until Thursday when the reality of my new situation kicked in. I cried a lot that night. I really wanted to go home, but I know nobody would believe me. I had a lot of projects due, and at home, well, I wouldn't be able to get them done, so I decided to try and ignore everything and just focus on my schoolwork. Saturday morning, I get woken up by the sound of the front door at 10 a.m. I double check to make sure my door is locked and wait behind it until I hear them leave. It only took them 15 minutes to clear out the trash today. I sighed with relief when I heard the front door a second time. I still wasn't going to leave my room though. I opened my curtains, put on my headphones, and started modeling. At around 3 p.m. I heard a faint knock. I removed my headphones to make sure I was hearing it right. After about a minute, I heard it again. It was louder. I looked at my door and heard 3 more knocks. They were coming from the window. Now I know something is wrong. Because my room is on the 2nd floor, the knocking becomes more frequent, but I don't dare turn around. Instead, I walk backwards to the window and close the curtains behind my back. Just then I saw a shadow of a tall silhouette on the wall. Whatever was knocking was very much real. I closed the curtains and the knocking stopped for a minute, but I still didn't turn around. I was unsure of what to do next. Maybe it's gone. Or is that the they Carl was talking about? Before I could really find a cohesive trail of thought, the knocking on my window started again, but this time louder and even more frequent. And then I heard 3 knocks on my door. This is it. I'm dead. No way I'm making it out. I started crying. What else could I do? It's me, Carl. Carl shouted from the other side of the door. I could barely hear it with the knocking. I had no way to know if it was really Carl or not, but what choice did I have? I opened the door and was greeted by a big smile. Carl told me to wait outside my room with my eyes closed, hands covering them and everything, so I did. He gave me a pat on my back and entered my room. I could hear him open my window and the knocking stopped. 2 loud thuds followed, and I could feel the air move behind me as Carl guided whatever was outside my window downstairs. I could hear heavy footsteps going all throughout the house, until the front door opened and closed again. But I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't open my eyes. I stood still for what felt like an eternity, until I heard Carl shout at me that it's all clear. I slowly turned around and opened my eyes. I saw Carl walk up the stairs with a smile like always. I tried talking and asking him what had just happened, but I tripped over my words. I was in too much shock to form a full sentence. I call them collectors. I'm not sure where they came from, but I also don't know why you are able to see what you see. Normally their existence stays unknown. They are able to mask themselves. That's why your friend was able to see someone take out the trash, but that never happened in reality. As Carl started explaining, he pointed to my chair. Sit down. You're coming back from a panic attack. We don't want you to faint. Once again, I tried to speak, but I found myself only able to speak gibberish. But that didn't matter. Carl knew what I was going to ask. It was able to sense you were in the house, either through heightened senses, or maybe it recognized a change in patterns. I'm not sure myself. These things, they show up to keep things the same. Every week they show up and clear out the trash because they want to keep the trash cans the same as how they first saw them. Empty. It may seem helpful, and most times it is, but sometimes, well, let's not get into details. I finally started to calm down, and just then I noticed all my trash was gone. But I know for certain that creature didn't have any time to take it. Just like on the camera, the creatures never showed up. Maybe they can clean it from a range. Whatever it is, I'm glad it's gone now. Well, kid, I should leave. And don't worry too much, this window incident was a one-time thing. Carl stood up, smiled at me, and left the room. I made sure to lock the door behind him, however, just to be sure. The rest of the night, I kept thinking about what to do. I mean, I have to get out of here, right? I can't stay here. Now that they know I'm special somehow. But maybe Carl is right. What if this was a one-time thing? I couldn't hear anything that evening, and decided to head to bed early. I could hear the neighbors arguing again, and I took notice of what they said. I never realized it before, but they kept repeating the same things at the same time every day. I felt a cold chill as I realized that this is probably what Carl meant with the sometimes where they aren't as helpful. It makes me happy he showed up because maybe I would have ended up like my neighbors. I was freaked out the rest of the night. You can't really blame me, can you? Sunday morning rolls and I hear the front door open at 10 a.m. It was weird, but I assumed when Carl led the creature outside, he managed to change their schedule somehow. Either way, I wasn't leaving my room, nor was I going to open my curtains again. At 10 past 3 p.m., I heard 3 knocks on my door. "It's me, Carl." Carl shouted from the other side of the door. It was odd he was here, but I opened the door anyways. When I opened the door, I was greeted by a big smile. Carl told me to wait outside my room with my eyes closed, hands covering them and everything, so I did. He gave me a pat on my back and entered my room. I could hear him open my window and stop. There was no knocking, no thuds, just silence. Only then did I realize I never heard the front door a second time. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and decided the only place where people would believe my story is here. So please, please listen to me. Don't investigate them. Don't wonder about them. Don't let them know you are aware they exist. But most importantly, don't leave your room when they arrive. I've always had the prettiest eyes at school. Everyone says so. Other people in my family have the same boring brown ones, but mine are green with gold flecks. Everyone says I should be a model when I'm older, and I probably will. All throughout school, I've dated all of the most popular guys. I love watching them watch me. For homecoming, I'm planning to go with Lee Tucker, the running back. He's already getting calls from a bunch of SEC schools, and I've caught him staring at me a bunch of times. There's only one problem. The new girl. Her name is Ileana, and she has my exact same eyes. I saw it the minute she arrived at school. There they were, like looking in a mirror. The same green luster, the exact same gold flecks in all the exact same places. Except that she has this pale, blank face. It made me sick to look at, honestly. Like putting a $2 frame around the Mona Lisa. Worst of all, no one else seemed to notice how ugly she is. She'd barely been at school 2 hours when I saw Lee and some of the other football players chatting her up at her locker. The whole time they were talking to her, though, she just stared down the hall at me, like she was in a trance or something. After school, I saw her sitting on the front of her car in the parking lot waiting for me. She drives this Frankenstein of an old Camry, complete with a driver's side door with no paint. It's basically the opposite of my cute little BMW. My dad got it for me. Of course, he's one of the top 5 pediatric surgeons in the country, so he can afford it. "You must be Alice," said Ileana. "I was wondering if we could go get some coffee." She blinked, and TBH, it kind of made my stomach turn because it was like she was blinking my eyes. Why would I do something like that? I asked. Come on, she said, smiling. We're connected. You can tell that, right? We should be friends. I've got friends, I said. Then I got in my car and peeled away while she stared at me in this creepy way. At dinner, my dad could tell I was moping, so he asked me, "What's wrong, Pumpkin?" And then I told him about Ileana and how she talked with Lee and about her stupid eyes. My dad practically choked on his chicken parm. "You stay away from that girl," he told me. "Don't even speak to her." I told him he was kind of freaking me out, but he just repeated himself and then got his worried dad look and said he had to make some phone calls. So with dad acting totally psycho, I grabbed my phone and decided to do a little light Instagram stalking. Lee is kind of basic in terms of his Instagram game, but I can't help scrolling through his pics. Except this time, I found like 5 pictures of him and Ileana chowing down on enchiladas at Señor Taco. I screamed and tossed my phone, which totally cracked on the marble floor. Oh well, time for an upgrade, I guess. After that whole incident, I decided that Ileana and I needed to have a little chat. I tracked her down at her locker and asked if she wanted to grab Starbucks after 4th period, and she was totally up for it. At coffee, she kind of stared at me like a shy puppy, looking at me with my own eyes. Once in a while, she peeped out little questions like, "Do you have any brothers and sisters?" And "What's your dad like?" "Why did you move here?" I asked after playing nice for a few minutes. "Did something bad happen at your last school?" She shook her head. "This might sound silly, but I moved here for you. I've been looking for you for a long time," she said. Psycho, we just met." "Yeah, cool," I said, casually finishing my latte. I better get back to my dad." "Say hi for me," she said. "Yeah, sure." Dinner that night turned out to be weirdly tense, especially after I mentioned my coffee with Ileana. "I told you to stay away from her," my dad said, squeezing his fork so tight his fist turned white. "Why?" I said. "Is she like your love child or something?" "No," he said. "She's just..." His pager went off. "Just stay away. She could be dangerous. I need a few days to figure out why she's here." I really wanted to do what Dad advised, but the next day at school I walked into the cafeteria to find Lee and Ileana fully making out at the corner table. I fully dropped my salad, which got dressing all over my best Jimmy Choo boots. I walked over to them, going full Real Housewives psycho. "Who do you think you are?" I shouted at Ileana. "I just wanted to see what you like about him," she said. "Why you picked him, you know? Or maybe I wanted to know what it was like to kiss him. You've been given so much in your life. Sometimes I think you don't even realize it. The car, the boy, the money. But are you grateful for any of it?" "You realize you and I aren't dating, right?" interjected Lee. I uncapped the green machine juice I was drinking and flung it all over them. "You're dead," I told Ileana. "Dead." She licked at a bit of the juice as it trickled down her face. "I hope you don't mean that," she said. "I wanted so badly to like you, Alice. I wanted to give this whole process some time. Now I'm starting to think I should just get it over with." "What the hell are you talking about?" I shouted. But by then the gym teacher, Mr. Lowry, was pulling me off to the principal's office. After that whole incident, I could tell people were starting to get the impression that I was the psycho. So I decided it was time to control the narrative. I jumped on TikTok and made a little video explaining how Ileana had come into school to steal my boyfriend, and was probably wearing colored contacts to copy my signature look, and how basically she was probably trying to steal my whole identity. I titled it, "This Psycho Stole My Eyes," and posted it. Believe me, it got plenty of views, and the comments told me I was totally in the right. Knowing that justice was on my side, I grabbed a large rock from the field by the parking lot and smashed it through the windshield of Ileana's tragedy of a car, which honestly was probably an upgrade for that piece of junk. As the rock rolled to the pavement, I looked back to see Ileana watching me with my eyes, and a slightly amused expression on her face. She mouthed words into the wind that I couldn't hear. Before I had to look at her for even a second longer, I got in my car and drove home. I woke up in the middle of the night from a really good dream about Lee and found someone in bed with me. "Lee?" I whispered, half asleep. "Did you sneak in?" "It's me," said a soft voice. "I thought it would be a nice surprise." I looked into my own eyes, blinking back at me. "Ileana?" I asked. "I know we're not sisters," she said. "Not all the way, anyway. And we never got to be babies together, but we still have time." I started screaming as loud as I could, over and over again. "This isn't how I wanted it to be," she said. "I know it's not your fault the way you are, I mean. He spoiled you. But I wanted to at least get to know you before—" "Dad!" I screamed. "Help!" His room was only a few feet from mine. His footsteps should have been thudding down the hall by now. "I'm sorry," she said. "He can't come. You see, this whole thing, it was really between him and me. I was just projecting a few things onto you, but you're really just another victim here." She got up and looked out at the full moon, examining something in her palm. "I did have a sister when I was born," she continued. "A real one. A twin. They said she died at birth, but something never quite made sense to me. You see, they lost her body at the hospital. It happens sometimes, they say. They get mixed up with other medical waste and then thrown into the incinerator. But my mom always said she heard 2 cries when I was born. She saw 2 healthy babies." Something was dripping down her hand, dripping out of whatever she was holding. I lay in the bed, my covers tight around me, like they'd protect me from the boogeyman. And would you believe that same night, at that same hospital, a little girl was born to one of the top pediatric surgeons in the country? Now, it may take some digging, but if you look at that little baby's medical records, they'll tell you she was born blind. Yet somehow those records later got altered to say her eyes were fine. Odd, don't you think? She took a step toward me. "Where do you think that little blind girl got her eyes?" "No," I started to say. "No. You keep telling everyone I've got your eyes. I copied you. I'm here to tell you, yours are stolen." She exhaled sharply. "But like I said, none of this is your fault. You're just the beneficiary, and now the price is paid. We can leave as friends." She opened her palm to reveal what she'd been holding all this time, a pair of eyeballs, fully intact and dripping with blood. I knew from their dull brown color who they belonged to. "Dad," I said weakly. "The price is paid now," she said. "It's possible he's still alive if you hurry." She pulled open my clenched hand and put the eyeballs inside. "Here," she said. "You keep them." My dad didn't end up making it. The funeral is coming up this week. At least everyone at school felt bad for me. Lee even offered to take me out to a movie. I went, but I wasn't really into it. I just spent the whole time looking over my shoulder, wondering if she was there. The cops are still looking for Ileana, but they don't have much to go on. Apparently that wasn't even her real name. The police have some grainy camera footage from Ileana at school, but it wasn't really enough to get a description out to the media. I tried to describe what she looked like, but her features are so boring it was hard to even describe them. "Just look at my eyes," I told them, wishing I could rip their stupid faces off. "She's got the same ones." "It's just eyes," said one of the cops. "Not really enough detail to go off of. What else have you got?" I shook my head. "Nothing." This might be the first and last story that I will be able to share with all of you. I have been hooked on fishing ever since I was a little boy. There was a river a couple of kilometers away from the place we lived, to which we would always go at least once or twice a week with my dad. Each week it was the same thing. My dad would come home from work and ask me, "Waylon, did you finish your homework?" And I would always cut him off right before he could even finish saying what he was about to say. "Yes, Dad. Now, please, let's go to the river," I would then say to him in an excited manner. He would then give me a faint smile, knowing that I probably haven't even looked at my homework. And right he was, most of the time. At first we had a rule that I would have to finish my homework first, and then we could go to the river. But after a couple of attempts and a couple of missed fishing trips, that rule was quickly dismissed. That might have not been the best decision, but we couldn't help it since we both loved fishing so much. We would then go late in the afternoon, camp at the river the whole night, and come back home somewhere around lunchtime. Those were the days, I'm telling you. Anyways, that was a long time ago. Ever since he passed away, things just haven't been the same. I have tried going fishing a couple of times, but I just couldn't enjoy the fishing experience by itself. But rather I would reminisce about old times and how good things were. I used to work as a delivery man, and most of the time I worked alone. I started enjoying the time alone, being able to listen to whatever music you want, and not having someone on your head the entire day. A couple of months passed and my boss decided to upgrade my truck to a bigger one. The problem was that I would have to deliver much heavier stuff, and it would be pretty hard to do that by myself. Problem solved. I had a new colleague accompanying me then. His name was Dave. He had been working for the company for a long time, but we never spoke to each other. At first I thought, here goes my peace and quiet that I love so much. But after we got to know each other, I found out that Dave was not a bad guy at all. People might have thought bad of him because of his appearance, but he had a kind heart. One day we were going back and forth in our conversation. "So, what were you up to this weekend?" I asked him. "Oh, not much. Just went on a little fishing trip. There's a lake nearby and it's full of fish, I'm telling you." My eyes widened up a bit. Dave didn't strike me as a guy who would like to go fishing. "No way," I snapped back at him. "What?" he asked me. We talked a bit, and he got really excited when he learned that I loved fishing as well. That's the story of how we became fishing buddies. Fast forward a bit. It was Friday, somewhere around lunchtime, and we had to deliver a package to a rural village right next to our town. On the way there, we saw a lake a couple of kilometers before the village. We never knew about this lake, and it piqued our interest. We always carried our fishing gear in the truck, so there was no way we wouldn't visit this new spot we just learned about. Package delivered. We went around the village searching for a fishing store, because we had to buy some supplies first. And surprisingly, we found one. "Hey there, boss," I said to the cashier as soon as I entered the store. "Hello, mate. What can I get for you?" He replied, Just a bunch of worms and a can of corn," I said. "Anything else I can get for you, mate?" he asked as he was typing on the cash register. No, that's all, thank you. Oh, and by the way, do you know anything about this lake that's a couple of kilometers before the village? I went back to ask him. His face dropped. This surprised me a bit because he had such a big smile on his face the whole time. I'm sorry I can't tell you anything about it, he replied coldly. I just assumed he didn't know anything about this lake, so I just grabbed the bag with the supplies, gave him the money, and headed towards the exit door. Have a nice day, sir, I said to him as I exited the store. Good luck, was the last thing I heard as I was leaving the premises. We were really excited about going to this lake despite not knowing anything about it, so we entered the car and took off. The way he said good luck, I didn't quite like it, Dave said to me. Why, he probably meant good luck with fishing or something, I replied. Yeah, probably, Dave muttered. It was getting kind of late. The road that led to the lake was really bad, but that didn't stop us, and we finally reached the lake. The place was beautiful. Not a single ripple on the water, surrounded by thick shrubbery and tall pine trees. I was surprised how there was no one else besides us here. As we were getting our fishing gear out, a tall, bearded man approached us. Hello there, I said to him as he was coming towards us. Are you the owner of this lake? I asked him. Nothing again. He then reached his hand into his bag that he was carrying with him. I got scared for a second, but then he pulled out a notebook and started writing something down in it. A couple of minutes passed and he was finally done. He left the notebook on the ground and he started walking back towards the forest. Not long after he was gone, all of this really weirded me out. Hey, what's up? Dave asked me. During this strange encounter, Dave was in the truck, so he had no idea what had happened, and so I thoroughly explained. For some reason, Dave found this to be really funny. Don't think much of it, Whale, he told me while giggling. Dave started setting up the tent as I was getting the fishing rods ready. Maybe because the shock from all of this, I completely forgot about the notebook. An hour or two later, I had to take a piss, so I headed towards the woods. On my way there, I caught a glimpse of the notebook, but it wasn't on the ground where the mysterious man had left it. It was pinched underneath the wipers of the truck. I thought to myself, this is really weird. There was no way for the notebook to get over there by itself, and we haven't seen a single person go by. I forgot entirely about taking a piss and I headed for the notebook. I opened the notebook and the following was written down on the first page. It requires you to abide to the following rules as soon as you read them. 1. Don't have more than 5 fishing rods out at once. 2. Do not litter. 3. Release all fish that weigh under 2.66 kilograms. The first set of rules seemed normal, setting aside rule number 3, which was oddly specific. But then the rules started getting weird. 4. You can light a fire twice, and each must contain no more than 6 logs. Only after the first fire has gone out can you light a second one. 5. You must write down in this notebook everything important that has happened in the last hour. After you do that, you must tear off and burn the page with the things you have written down on it, within 6 minutes of writing it. 6. You cannot talk to each other about anything regarding your experience throughout the night, but you can read it from the notebook before burning the page. 7. If you break any 2 of those rules, you will be unable to leave the lake for the next 6 hours, starting from the moment you have broken the given rules. If that happens, you must pay close attention to the notebook. 8. If you make it through the 6 hours, you will be able to leave, but you must never speak to anyone about anything regarding this lake. You have been warned. At first, I was unsure if I read the rules correctly. Is this some kind of joke? I ran to Dave with the notebook and I gave it to him. He read through the rules and started laughing. "There is no way you believed any of this, right?" he asked me while laughing. "Yeah, right," I replied, letting out a nervous giggle. "Come on, this guy is probably just trying to scare us so that we don't do anything stupid and ruin this beautiful lake. And by the looks of it, he succeeded in scaring you," Dave said. "Nah, you're imagining things," I replied, trying to not look scared at all. "Anyways, let's get back to fishing," Dave said. As we only had 4 rods in total, we were respectful enough towards nature to not litter, and we didn't catch a single fish for the first couple of hours. So we complied with the first 3 rules without even thinking about them. It got cold really fast and Dave said that it's time to light a fire. While he was chopping wood for the fire, I decided to play along with rule number 5. And so as soon as the next hour came, I started writing down what had happened. I wrote down that nothing out of the ordinary had occurred during this last hour. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw that the tip of my rod had started to bend a little. I immediately jumped out of my chair and I set the hook. And there it was, the first fish caught for the day. It was a catfish which weighed around 2 kilos. Dave said it would be perfect for the grill. I teased him and said, "Aren't we going to keep up to the rules?" He just looked at me and laughed. Dave put his knife through the fish's head and started filleting it. I then used the page that I had just written down on as fuel for the fire. The fire had 7 logs in it, so while Dave wasn't looking, I removed one of the logs. The other thing that was bugging me was the time. 6 minutes hadn't passed, so rule number 4 and number 5 were complied with. We ate and we got back to fishing. The next hour came. I opened the notebook to start writing down what had happened, but then I saw that rule number 3 had been erased from the first page. I mentioned it to Dave, but he didn't believe me and he thought that I was trying to scare him. I brushed it off as a coincidence. Man, how naive could I be? I wrote down what had happened during the last hour and I poured myself a drink. As we were talking to each other, Dave suddenly stopped talking. I asked him what was wrong, but he didn't answer. I thought that he was mad at me for some reason, so I decided to not bug him for the time being. Here comes the next hour. I reached for the notebook, but Dave got it before me. When I took a closer look, I realized that he was shaking a little. I asked him what's wrong, but he didn't answer. I've never seen him look scared ever. This was a first for me. After he finished writing in the notebook, he handed it to me. It read the following: "I know you might not believe me and think I'm trying to scare you, but I kid you not, I saw something on the other side of the lake." It resembled a deer in a way, or only it did at first. I think it realized that I was looking at it, and when it did, it stood up on its 2 back legs and it started staring at me. I know my eyes might be playing tricks on me, but it looked like its flesh was rotting, and it was hanging down from parts of its body. I just couldn't take my eyes off it. Please tell me I'm not going crazy. As I was reading this, I took a glance at Dave. I could see the terror in his eyes. I was scared to look at the place he mentioned this creature was, but I did. There was nothing there. Dave looked as well. Confusion was written all over his face. I ripped the page out of the notebook and I threw it in the fire. "Maybe we should slow down on drinking, Dave," I said to him. "I am perfectly sober, Whale. I don't think alcohol has anything to do with this," he replied. His voice was trembling. It was midnight now. We both took turns writing down what we thought about this strange occurrence. As I was writing in the notebook, we both heard some branch break in the distance. We both looked in the direction of where the noise came from. To our relief, it was actually a deer. A normal-looking deer passing by. I started laughing. On the other hand, Dave got mad that he had been scared for nothing. He took an empty bottle and he threw it at the deer as it was running away. "Hey, you should go pick that up," I told Dave. Yeah, my bad. I just got really mad for a second there. He replied and we both started laughing. Dave went off to look for the bottle that he threw at the deer. I decided to write down for the last time what had happened in the notebook. I thought to myself, maybe the person that handed me the notebook is the owner of this lake, and he likes reading about the experiences of the people that visit the lake. I took my pen and opened the notebook, only to see that all of the rules from the first page have disappeared. I started getting scared again. What's going on? I asked myself. Then I realized that Dave just broke another rule. No littering. As I was starting to panic, I saw a new rule appear right before my eyes on the first page of the notebook. Do not move. What? I muttered. As soon as I read the new rule, I felt a presence standing behind me. Chills went down my spine. Dave? I whispered. I could feel and hear something breathing right next to my ear. Chills went down my spine once again, and the smell. It smelled like something had died and had been rotting there for weeks. I wanted to scream, but I was horrified of what might happen if I do. So I just stood there staring straight ahead, not moving a muscle. A couple of minutes passed and that thing finally started going back into the woods. It had only been a couple of minutes, but for me it felt like hours had gone by. I started running towards the truck. I got in, but when I tried to start the truck, nothing happened. I whipped out the notebook to see if a new rule had appeared, but it hadn't. The only new thing on the page was the following sentence. I warned you. I once again felt like something was watching me, and unfortunately I was right. When I looked in the side mirror of the truck, I could see it. It looked exactly how Dave described it. It was standing behind a tree, peeking at the truck. Taking a closer look, it had arms and legs like a human would, but the torso and the head of a deer. It was holding something in its left hand. When I realized what or who it was, I wanted to throw up. It was Dave. I guess all of this was too much for me and I passed out. I woke up in the morning with tears flowing down my face. The notebook was gone and so was Dave. Everything was right where it was the night before. The tent, the fishing rods, the stools, everything. I started looking for Dave. I was way too scared to scream his name because I thought that thing might still be out here. The feeling of helplessness overwhelmed me. I went back in the truck and this time I managed to start it. Without a second thought, I floored it, leaving all the stuff that we brought here behind. As I was driving on the bumpy road, I saw that the tall bearded man was staring at me from the edge of the forest. I never looked back again and I drove straight home. People have asked me what happened to Dave. I was never able to tell them the real story because I was too scared of what would happen to me. Well, no more. This burden is too much to carry, and that's why I'm sharing the story with all of you. I do not know what might happen to me, but I can't blame anyone for it. We had been warned.